Need your DFS picks for tonight's 8-game NHL slate. Start us off at center, Paul.
I'm fading the top pivot on the DK board tonight, Emerson. That's Patrice Bergeron, priced at $8,400 because he's going to be without his running mate, Brad Marchand, who's been suspended for the next 3 games. I think the visiting Wings will also provide stiff opposition for the Bees. I think a lot of the top price centers, in fact, have tough matchups tonight. So for me, I'm going to go to the go-to center in Tampa, and that's Steven Stamkos, who's back to leading his club in scoring with 24 points in 20 games this season. He's on a heater of late with 6 points in his last 4, in fact. He faces a struggling Jordan Binnington, who's nowhere close to the top of his game with 20 goals against in his last 6 starts. Take the Bolts captain tonight for $7,400.
Okay, Pete, how about you, dude?
I'm going with Trevor Zegras from the Anaheim Ducks. Rivalry matchup coming up against the Kings. Trevor Zegras really exploding here over the past 10 games or so. He's got 9 points over his past 7. Has had a good shot volume all season long, even when he was off to a slow start and couldn't put the puck in the net. But of course, Zegras, one of the highly touted rookies on the board this season. And I love what he's doing, especially since the return of Rickard Rakell. Rakell has points in 3 of his first 4 games since coming back from injury. So I'm going with the USA-born, tried and true Trevor Zegras, one of my favorite players in the league for sure.
AJ, your center tonight is who?
I'm going to go with, again, like Paul, kind of fading the top of the group and go with Mikael Granlund at just $5K tonight. He's got 10 points in his previous 8 games, including 2 with the man advantage. The Jackets, for their part, have given up 3.3 goals per game in their last 10, so it's a good matchup for Nashville, and you can ride the hot hand without paying up too much. One option that will be available, if you do want to use them, breaking news here, guys, Jack Hughes is going to play tonight for the Devils, $7,100. Again, he's a little bit higher on the price range. Obviously, he's been out for a while, but this is a guy who can just absolutely play, and maybe a few other DFS players out there will be scared off by the injury return.
So in the wings and things department, Pete, who is your guy?
Well, I'm definitely eager to see if Jesper Bratt is going to be playing with Jack Hughes, assuming Hughes is in the lineup, like was just mentioned. So Jesper Bratt actually has 17 points in his past 14 games, covering shots on goal as well. He's second on the team behind elite defenseman Dougie Hamilton, who's just pounding out the shots these days. So I'm definitely keeping an eye on the lineup construction with Hughes' return, but whether it's Bratt or his line mate on the opposite wing, Andreas Janssen, these are 2 guys that I think you need to work into your lineup, whether you can have one or both, or maybe even if one of them is playing with Jack Hughes at even strength, go with the stack, baby. Jack Hughes is the real deal, full-fledged breakout candidate, and any association for either of those 2 wings, Janssen or Bratt, is, I think, in your best interest tonight.
AJ, what are you doing at wing?
Well, first, I would definitely consider stacking Matt Duchene for only $5,800 with Mikael Granlund. But if you're not with me on the Predators tonight, I think you give Kirill Kaprizov a look. In November, he's racked up 17 points in 13 games, leading the Wild in points over that stretch. He gets a fantastic matchup with the Coyotes, who did earn a shutout last night, but they are going into the second game of a back-to-back. They've allowed 2.6 goals per game over their last 10. It's a steep price point at $7,400 rather, but I do think you have to seriously consider moving up for Kaprizov tonight.
Okay, Paul.
I haven't agreed with AJ in this spot for a long while, but I will here. I like the potential for that mismatch as Minnesota hosts the Coyotes. I know the visitors are coming off a 1-0 shutout last night. That's a 48-save effort by their goalie Karel Vejmelka for his first win of the season. But that results in unlikely to repeat as a lightning strike in a second of back-to-backs, and Scott Wedgwood will get the nod in the nets tonight. So I like the fact that Kirill Kaprizov, 14 points his last 10 games, and the Wild have won 3 of their last 4. I think it's a great play. But I also like the matchup for Timo Meier of the Sharks, who faces a New Jersey club that has lost 5 of their last 7. Despite the return of one of their top 6 forwards, I still think that team is in a little bit of trouble. Meier has 11 points in his last 11 games, 10 games played as well. He's priced at $6,800 and will play in all the high leverage minutes as usual on the road tonight.
And then at defenseman, AJ, anyone stand out to you who may have an advantage?
Well, Washington's John Carlson has 5 multi-point games in his last 7 contests, and he's only coming in at 6,500, which compared to 4 blue liners on the slate who will cost you over 7K. The matchup with Florida admittedly isn't great. They'll be facing Sergei Bobrovsky, but that should serve just to lower the drafted percentage for Carlson here. He's second in the league in power play points behind Roman Josi, who represents a $1,200 discount compared to the Preds defenseman.
Paul?
AJ's telepathically communicating with me. I'm on him with Carlson as well. The point scoring in the last 10 games, he got 13. Caps offense is banging out 3.5 goals per game. I don't know why he's priced so low. And the Panthers, for their part, they've given up 13 goals against in their last 4 games. I think it's prime time for Carlson to pad those stats. And I also like Miro Heiskanen picking up his offensive game of late, looking like the dynamic player that he was in his breakout year a couple of seasons ago. He has 8 points in his last 10 games played. My thinking is that he's not going to be available at this relatively low price point of $6,200 if he keeps this up. So I'll take him tonight. He faces a Carolina club that's tough, but they're on a 3 out of 4 loss streak. So all things point to Heiskanen continuing his recent run as well.
Okay, Pete, the blue line crew. Who's your guy?
I have Heiskanen in my lineup as well, my mock lineup for tonight, because he leads the Stars in scoring. But go to the bargain bin here, tap into the power play of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Adam Boquist has been starring on that unit lately. Of course, there's been a spot up for grabs for a few weeks now with Patrick Laine out of the mix because of injury. So Adam Boquist, who of course came over from the Blackhawks in the offseason, getting a new opportunity here. And he's kind of been upbeat about it. It's one of those things, like Columbus wants guys that want to play for them, that are upbeat about playing for them in a big role. And Boquist has a 3-game point streak totaling 5 points, including a 3-point game with a couple of power play points in between. So yeah, I really like what Boquist brings to the table with that exposure to a top 10 power play unit. I mean, what a breath of fresh air, right? They had Tortorella for so long. You know, their power play was down in the dumps for years, but now they're top 10 in the league and they've stayed there through 2 months of the season. So I'm rolling with Boquist for a really cheap price.
And then, Pete, what's your strategy tonight in the crease between the pipes?
I'm going to ride the hot hand if he's getting the start. Jake Ottinger has been really good for the Dallas Stars, 4-0-0. He's played 5 games. He's got like a .950 plus save percentage. And I think he was the guy, like, for season-long leagues that we had the most faith in out of the 4. Bishop's still injured. Khudobin hasn't been as good since that playoff run. And then Braden Holtby got off to a hot start, but then is now dealing with injury. And I think now he's taking a back seat to Ottinger because he was one of the bright spots of the team last year when they had all those injuries to Hintz and Radulov and all these other guys constantly. He was like one of the best players on the Stars last year, but he had a ton of overtime or shootout losses. Now it seems like that stint in the AHL to start the year really lit a fire under him. I think he's taken the number 1 job and not looking back. He's one of the best young goalies in the league. So I will roll Jake Ottinger, even with a difficult opponent at home against the Hurricanes.
AJ, who are you rolling with at goalie?
Well, Pete, I hate to do it to you, but it looks like it's going to be Holtby tonight, not Ottinger. It was Holtby that's manning the starter's crease. Not confirmed yet, so obviously we can wait on that. For my part, another one we don't know for sure, but it looks like Mackenzie Blackwood probably going to start for New Jersey. Now, his numbers aren't great on the year, 4-1-2 with 1 shutout and a 2.72 goals against average, but the Sharks have struggled to produce all season long. New Jersey is -145 favorites on the DK Sportsbook, so I like the matchup here. I might be overthinking this by not just rolling with Kaapo Kähkönen, who's confirmed to go for Minnesota tonight against the wayward Yotes, but I just don't want to pay up that high there, and I want to look for a little more value and go with Blackwood further down the list.
All right, Paul.
For me, it begins with the best win probability for a team before I even look at who's the starter. And now that AJ's told me that Kähkönen's the guy, I don't even mind paying to the top of the board. I think DK gets it right. This is a Minnesota club that's flying right now against a Coyotes offense that's puny at best, and they're in the second of back-to-backs on the road. I do expect a win, easy win for the home side tonight. so I'll pay up for $8,500. But I'm also tempted to look at the Blues and the Bolts game. I can't remember when Vasilevsky was so far down the list, priced at only $7,700. That looks like a tempting option with the high win probability for the visiting goalie, who's not often that inexpensive in DFS play.
All right, Paul, this is, I feel like when you shine. Do you have any good value plays for us tonight?
You know I do, Emerson. Thanks for teeing it up. I like to find value options on the blue line, and tonight there's no exception. I'll be using the Sharks' Mario Ferraro, who's shown a lot of growth in his overall game. He's playing well over 20 minutes a night and has a modest 5 points in his last 10 games. But when you pair that with his leading shots on blocked rate, he's got 36 in his last 10 games. It's no wonder that he averages north of 10 points a game in DK action, and he's valued for me at $5,100 tonight. A little further down the list on the blue line chart, I like Dmitry Orlov of the Caps, who's a second credible offensively talented defenseman in the Washington mix. I spoke of that high-octane offense. It's like no other in the league for my money. He has 7 points in his last 10 games and figures to pad those numbers as long as this offense continues to hum along at their season-long pace.
AJ, what do you got?
Well, somebody has to play a power play quarterback for the Carolina Hurricanes tonight, and it's not going to be Brett Pesce or Tony DeAngelo with both of those guys on the COVID protocol list. So it's either going to be Jakob Slavin or Brady Skjei, and I think you have to kind of monitor that situation, but they're pretty cheap on DraftKings tonight. Slavin more expensive at $4,200, Brady Skjei at $32. So I would look at either one of those guys. I also like Owen Tippett at $2,800 for Florida. He's playing in a first-line role. He's getting an extended look with the number one power play unit there as well. And unlike Paul, I'm not as scared off of Boston just because Marchand's out of the lineup. They're used to him always being suspended anyway. And Taylor Hall comes in at just $4,200 while getting a bump up to the top line there.
All right, Pete, need some value from you, dude.
So I'll chime in about Ottinger if he's not playing. Keep an eye on Jonathan Quick, whether that team wins or loses. He keeps the games low scoring and has one of the best save percentages in the league. He's unconfirmed at the moment for the Kings against the Ducks, but I'm not afraid to roll out Jonathan Quick if he starts in net. And then for my value play, I'm going to stack the Capitals, even with a tough opponent in the Panthers. The Panthers have no Barkov. We expect. So I'm going to stack Alex Ovechkin, 9,600, with Alexei Protas, 3,200, who's playing as his new sidekick on the top line. Also seeing a little bit of power play time together. Protas has 3 points in his past 2 games, just scored his first NHL goal the other day, and playing with Ovi and Kuznetsov. Ovi's like the Hart Trophy favorite right now in my book. So, and he just keeps it going, man. He's now only 1 goal behind Leon Draisaitl for the league lead. So tap into him, offset his price with the value pick of the new kid on the block. 6'6", by the way, Alexei Protas.